Hi, welcome to my review of the new M. Night Shyamalan film, Knock at the Cabin. So this has a really interesting premise with this family away on holiday in a cabin in the woods, and one day out of nowhere, these four strangers turn up at their door claiming that they've had visions of the apocalypse and they need one of these family members to sacrifice another in order to save humanity. So with that concept, I thought there's so many different things they could do with this movie. You know, with a story like that, you have so many different interesting directions you could take this. And I think overall they've done a fairly solid job of telling this story. I think the film builds a lot of intrigue, and I think it does a very good job of putting us in the position of these characters, making us think about what you would do in a situation like this. You know, if you were actually put into this situation, how much would it take for you to be convinced enough to do what these people are asking you to do? What would it take? Would you try and escape? Or would you be fearful of what they were saying might actually be true? And I think it does a very good portrayal of what people would do potentially in a situation like this. But overall, I did have a few issues with the way the story here plays out. But there is a lot of good things to say about this film, so I'll get into that first. I absolutely loved Dave Bautista in this film. I think he brings so much to these more dramatic roles that he's getting recently. Not long ago, I saw him in that small part he had in Blade Runner 2049, and I thought he was just incredible there. So to see him getting other roles like that really, really interests me. And he's starting to become one of those actors who actually is one of the main draws for a film for me. You know, if I'm seeing him in another movie like this, I'm going to want to go just to see what he brings to the film, because he has his acting range, his emotional range to kind of play a character that can be soft and gentle whilst being so physically intimidating is really quite impressive. And you know, Dave Bautista is just in real life, you know, he's a really interesting and very open guy. And I think he brings that to his acting and helps us to really connect with him very quickly into the story. And that's definitely needed for a film like this, because part of the story working really relies on you having connection with both the family and to some extent these strangers as well. If you couldn't connect with these characters at all, this film just really wouldn't work, given what they're trying to persuade you of what's happening. But the way Dave Bautista portrays this character, you can really understand why these characters early on start to buy into, or at least hear him out on what he has to say about what he's seen about this impending doom. And I thought he just played this part so well. And overall, I just thought it was a very engaging film. You know, it had a lot of intensity. I was nervous not knowing what a lot of these characters were going to do next. I liked watching these events play out, and there's some pretty impressive imagery throughout the film as well. So it was definitely an enjoyable experience. I certainly was never bored through this, and I will very happily watch this again. But overall, I also did have a few issues with the movie. And I will try my hardest here to be spoiler free. But to get into my thoughts, I might have to go into a few mild details about the film. So if you really want to go in completely blind, please do come back to this review after you've gone and seen the movie. So they have a series of flashbacks, which is used as a way for us to be introduced and get to know this family that we're following. But it feels like, to me, it seems like M. Night wanted to have the opener of the film to be these strangers just turning up, and then boom, we get straight into it. But I guess the problem with that is will we be invested enough in the story of these characters to really fully invest ourselves and care about what's going on? So it seems like he wanted us to get to know them more, but does it through these flashbacks. And I don't know if it's just the way it was executed or what, but they always felt quite jarring to me. Suddenly go into these flashbacks, and it wasn't like they were telling us this really pivotal information about these characters that we would need to know later. It would kind of take us back, and it would just be them hanging out and having a nice time together and going through usual family dramas. It didn't really serve anything more to the story than just that. So it was kind of felt like we were taking away from the story and the action of what was going on, just to view these things which felt like some later character development. And it's just something about the way it was executed didn't entirely work for me. There's only this one bit of information that links these flashbacks to the current situation that the characters are in. And I felt like that information that they find out doesn't really go anywhere in the story. Like, even when it's revealed and explained what's going on, I felt like it was kind of pointless. It was inconsequential to any of the events in this story. And it feels like it was kind of thrown in as an afterthought. So I think there could have been something there that maybe had more relevance to what was actually going on now, that might have changed the way events played out. But the way this was done, it didn't really feel like it had any impact on the overall story. And again, it was just the way it was executed just didn't feel quite right to me. And this might just be a me thing, but I did for some reason feel like, especially for the first 2/3 of this film, like the way they portray the character of Andrew was that he was somewhat irrational, ignorant, and didn't really have like a full grasp on his anger and emotions. I felt like the film was portraying him in a way that was kind of telling me how to feel about him. And I couldn't help but think I would probably react very similarly to how he does in the film. And I think a lot of other people would as well. You know, he's looking for plausible reasons amidst all this chaos and confusion as to what could really be happening here. You know, is this being completely set up? Are these people delusional? You know, reasonable things to suggest in such a situation, because, you know, people are going to die here. He realizes the gravity of this situation. And I felt sympathetic to his character's points of view here. Whereas I feel like the film was kind of making us, I felt like it was trying to tell me how to feel about him, that he wasn't being reasonable by not properly listening to what these characters were saying and the evidence behind it. And I'm not sure I really liked that. I think I would have preferred it that the film just kind of naturally let us decide for ourselves how we felt about the characters' decisions here and what they chose to listen to or what they chose to believe. Whereas I felt like it was telling us somewhat. So I'd be interested to see on a rewatch if that's still the way I felt about it, but especially in the first half of Knock at the Cabin, I definitely started to notice that. And the last thing I'll talk about is the ending. And no spoilers, but you know, with M. Night Shyamalan, it's something that when you go into his films, you do kind of come to expect these big twist endings, you know, especially what he did with The Sixth Sense, you know, having such a big twist that turns everything that you've seen previously upside down and actually makes the film better for it. You see it in a completely different way and it makes the film even better. And not all of his twists that he's done in his movies have worked, but I do like the discussion they get going, and he's had a lot of interesting takes. And I feel like this movie played it so safe. I feel like the ending is fine. I didn't hate it, but it didn't really do anything that's gonna get a lot of discussion going afterwards. There's not a lot to ponder on and think about after you've left the film. It just kind of plays out. It's a fairly average, fine ending, and then that's the end of it. Now, I don't know if he's just being faithful to the source material here. Maybe that's how the book ends. I don't know, because I haven't read it, but I just felt a little bit disappointed at the end, just because of given the nature of this concept that he's working with here. There could have been a very interesting ending, whether it be ambiguous or some crazy twist ending. There could have been something, and I feel like he just played it way too safe here, so that was a little bit disappointing. So overall, I thought this was a fairly good new M. Night Shyamalan film. I haven't had a chance yet to read other people's reviews and opinions on the movie yet, but I suspect there will be a lot of other people like me that won't be seeing this as his masterpiece, but also definitely not one of the worst movies he's made either. You know, it's well made, it's an extremely well acted, it's got an interesting story, and I did just think it was very engaging and entertaining. You know, I was never bored in this film, and I would very happily go back and rewatch this one. So I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. Please leave a like if you've enjoyed my video, and I'll see you next time.